If a series of days could throw a hand, it would be the gauntlet between March 15th and 28th. Let me explain. But first, a disclaimer. As a warning, I'm going to be incredibly candid throughout this video, including showing post-surgery pics. Nothing too graphic, I promise, and just talking about some darker subjects in general. I really enjoy sharing stories and seeing all the crazy ups and downs everyone goes through in life, because I think we can all learn from each other. So I don't mind sharing these darker elements at all. That said, if it makes you uncomfortable, I totally understand, and I'll catch you in the next vid. Alright, let's hop into the story proper. Wednesday, March 15th, where the story technically starts, but there's some important context you have to know first. See, around August 2022, I started noticing problems with my left eye just in the light super late. Actually, before that, I had an issue with a random bout of tinnitus. Mentioned it in my 2022 wrap-up video, actually. The whole started 22 worried about going deaf in my left ear and started 2023 worrying about going blind in my right eye thing. After visiting my optometrist in November 22, being told I should definitely get the slightly blurry optic nerves of my left eye checked out, I called around and eventually made an appointment for Johns Hopkins, 5 months out. So I wouldn't get seen until March 23rd. That's fine, just gotta wait till then. 2023 starts out pretty well. Well, except for the fact that I got these new glasses prescribed and they're strong. Eventually, every morning before I realized, I start having to wake up away from the light and sit in bed for a few seconds as my left eye just completely loses vision before adjusting. But that's fine, it becomes a routine. You know what's not fine or routine though? My hedgehog, Kirishima. He's been with me for 4 years and I start to notice his personality and eating habits very quickly change. So quickly that by Wednesday, March 15th, I go to check on him and find that his back legs no longer work. He's come down with one case of wobbly hedgehog syndrome. Now, wobbly hedgehog syndrome is a neurological disease I knew was possible when getting a hedgehog as a pet. It's incurable, unpreventable as far as I know, and pretty much the only course of action once it advances as far as it did is to just make their last days comfortable. And so after 4 years with my boy, I make the decision to put him down Friday the 17th. To say that Thursday in between was rough is an understatement. And after snot-nosed puffy-eyed crying for my entire 8-hour work shift to MCR's Helena, I spent one last night with Kirishima in my hoodie, like old times, back when I was bonding with him at 2 months old. You know, before he hit his teenage years and decided he'd rather crawl into my armpit than actually stay in the hoodie. The thing is about Kirishima is he's forever stubborn. Tried to cut his nails the night before and he was still putting up a fight. Like, your entire back legs don't work. Why are you still fighting me? Make the math make sense. So, in a last act of defiance, instead of waiting for me to put him down the next morning, he ended up passing overnight after I put him back in his cage and told him goodnight one last time. As if to say, if I'm going out, I'm finna go out on my time. And just, what an incredible gift he gave me, being able to take care of him all this time. Really just being partners in crime. When I took him to get cremated the next morning, I was an absolute hot mess. In fact, hilariously, one of the ladies called me to ask if I wanted to drive all the way back to resolve a quote character limitation. I was like, ha! Joke's on you. I've been in this parking lot crying for 45 minutes. Also, nah, I'll just shorten the quote to his name. Speaking of being in the parking lot for 45 minutes, my eyes are doing weird things. I figure it's due to the mental stress of grief and all the crying, but my vision is literally doubled. And now, I've got to make it home with basically one eye or the other closed to stop the sensation. It's a harrowing experience, but I make it to pass out for the rest of that Friday, basically. What sets us next is some of the strongest grief I've probably ever felt. You don't really realize how much of an influence your pet has over you in your life until they're gone. I mean, thankfully the majority of my friends and coworkers have known what it was like to experience this grief and offered some incredible words, I guess, but it's also very concerning. I didn't realize how many people in my life had lost a pet, for pretty much all of them to hit me with wise words about the subject in some way. Still, Kirishima was the first pet I took care of by myself, and bonded with in such a way that I felt nothing but crushing loneliness when he was gone. It felt like an impossible hole, a scar on my soul that would never heal. But I had to keep pushing on, past the urge to feed him every night, past the urge to look over into his cage and keep finding him not there. Thankfully, through hanging out with friends when I was able, and watching some good videos, I was able to get myself together enough to get back to work. Oh well, for what days I had left. See, Thursday this week is March 23rd, and I at least had that to look forward to. After 7 whole months, I could finally figure out what's going on with my eyes. For sure this time. At least I hope. But they're not going to let me have this week easy. And after dealing with actually consistently blurry vision, switching to my old glasses for a spell, warning my coworkers that I'd be slow for the next few days, and struggling to put this packet of eye notes together for my ophthalmologist, just to make sure we cover all our bases and get the situation resolved. Thursday, the 23rd, finally comes. But first, let's take a small water break. Gotta stay hydrated. It's about to get real out of pocket real quick. Oh, how can I forget? Actually, let me introduce another player into this situation real quick. My mom, who drove up 2.5 hours to take me to my appointment on Thursday at 10:30 a.m. on some, oh yeah, they're gonna dilate your pupil, so I can totally drive you type energy. She was also supposed to start her new job that Monday the 27th. So I'm also very excited to figure out this eye thing and go celebrate her accomplishments. Also worth noting is that Kiroshima's ashes arrived at the vet that Thursday morning, so I was pretty stoked to see all the stuff relating to him. But now it's time to get into Thursday proper. Ready? Let's get it. My neuro-ophthalmologist is a very kind and patient person. Super appreciated considering I started the morning with double vision. It was very frightening, and I had a literal TED Talk sized packet of papers to try to explain the issue that had been plaguing me. But after a few tests, he told me that my optic nerves in both eyes were swollen. The right was about a 1 to 2. And the left was a 3. He said I might have something called intracranial hypertension, which, hilariously enough, I actually talked to my coworker about the day before, but I wanted him to bring it up first. It's basically, from my understanding, fluid in the cranium that can cause a lot of pressure. But the only way to find out if that's the cause is to rule out anything else, aka make sure there's no other masses causing problems. So he hands us a professional looking note and sends us to the ER to get an MRI. But it's never that easy. It's just go to the ER and do this thing. And after being bounced around different rooms and finally ending up in a proper room, I ended up going to the MRI around 8 p.m. I believe. The MRI is fascinating. I've never had one before, or anything adjacent, or surgery for that matter. They were like, "Are you claustrophobic?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess we're about to find out." Turns out I was not. I think the mirror that they had so I could see outside the machine helped a lot. And they gave me headphones for music and such. But hilariously, the music wasn't playing for the first half hour, so I was in there making beats and ciphers with the machine's sound. God. Anyway, so it wasn't intracranial hypertension. The plan was for it to be intracranial hypertension. I would get a spinal tap to release some of the fluid, and then probably some medications to help improve my vision over time. But my head had to be a little extra today. She was feeling herself. Because turns out I had a 7-centimeter mass pressing against the left side of my brain, aka a surprise brain tumor. Now, I need you to know something very important, and this is where the dark stuff comes in. While I felt my mom's heart sink and the doctor's happiness as she delivered the news, I felt a sense of catharsis. For the past few years, I had this weird feeling about turning 28. Like, it was either one of those ages you turn and stay at, or like it was it, I'll just say it. I didn't know if I was going to make it past 28, and it had been weighing heavy on me for years, just in the background. And the main culprit I entertained in those dark, sleepless nights was, dude, what if I randomly find out I have brain cancer or something? So when I got the news, it was sort of like, okay, where do we go next? Because I'm willing to fight for my vision as an artist, and if you have to risk cutting me open for that to happen, then so be it. My steely resolve to just jump into spontaneous brain surgery was just a crazy feat. Truly a wild moment on my behalf. But I just needed you to know that I had a weird suspicion that something was wrong with my head for years now, but I had no clue how to get an MRI or get checked on. And now that brings us back to the ER, where I now have to wait for the decision on when I'm gonna get surgery. Next week sometime? No. How about tomorrow? Well, maybe? Oh, random thing. Shout out to the male nurse who had to literally use a sonogram on my arm because my veins were too small to install an IV. What can I say? Get it from my mama. I would just like to say, time doesn't exist at Johns Hopkins. If someone tells you things will be ready shortly, just get ready to wait 3 to 4 hours. But as much as we played the waiting game, I couldn't have asked for a better series of teams to take care of me over my stay. I already mentioned my ophthalmologist, but everyone was so incredibly kind and patient, from the specialists to the nurses to the people bringing breakfast. We actually had a standout nurse who I won't mention by name, but she literally checked on us after her shift a few times. After she got off work. And I say us because it was her who prayed with my mom while surgery was going on, just before she got off of the night shift. Speaking of surgery, I legit met my neurosurgeon during gremlin hours. This is what I mean when I say Johns Hopkins doesn't exist within the confines of time. Because on Thursday night, after telling my mom it was okay for her to go home and sleep on an actual futon mattress to get some relief from that hard plastic chair she'd been in, I was visited by the man who was going to be cutting into my head. The him of brain surgery, as I was told, Dr. Chetan Bedagawa. I really hope I pronounced that right. Who entered my room around 4 a.m. and tried to have a full conversation about this tumor and how the surgery would go down. Mind you, at this point, I've stopped wearing my glasses to rest my eyes. I'm sure my breath is stinking, and oh yeah, it's 4 a.m. Still, like everybody else, he's just so kind and gentle. So sure, I'll listen to you give details on the spontaneous brain surgery during grilling hours, why not? And so, after waiting most of Friday to see if this surgery was taking place that afternoon, finding out it would be scheduled on Saturday morning, and then proceeding to gorge on Popeye since I could eat now, I was finally carted back to the operating room at 7:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, March the 25th. So, this might seem crazy, but the first thing I see in the light of my post-surgery haze is Kirishima, perched on my chest, staring down in judgment like, girl, get up, we can't both die in the same week. For a brief second, there's peace, before the utter chaos sets in. What's your name? Can you tell me why you're here? Grab my fingers and pull. Now push. Put your hands up like you're holding a big pizza. One doctor asked me, Deja, do you feel like your speech is slurred more than usual? To which I, in my mind, responded very distressingly, I just woke up. But according to my mom, it sounded more like, I just woke up. So, I don't know, maybe the doctor was onto something. There is apparently a saying that nobody sleeps in the ICU. And yeah, between the 50,000 times people came in for the same neurological testing, I'd say that's pretty accurate. In fact, all of this continued through my entire stay, actually. I have legitimately never been poked and prodded more in my life. Blood sugar check, IVs in both arms just in case, taking blood every 2 hours at one point, which, may I remind you, I have small veins, so they could only get blood out of my bald fist at a certain point. Not even my hands were safe. And then don't get me started on the absolute fruit salad concoction of pills I had to take. Just in a little cup. Take it to the head. Also, I want to note one more time, I spent most of my stay at Johns Hopkins without wearing glasses, mainly because my head was swollen to the point where they wouldn't fit on, and my eye was swollen shut. But don't worry, this is normal. It's supposed to get worse before it gets better. You know what didn't get worse? My eyesight, baby! Pretty soon after surgery, I realized my eyesight had returned like nothing happened, and that I am incredibly thankful for. That said, it's literally just going back to regular astigmatism. So skipping ahead a little, I hilariously heard at one point they were going to keep me till Wednesday. But the sole reasoning for that, I think, is that it seemed like I kept failing my neuro checks, but I didn't have my glasses on. So I'm still blind as a bat. Once the head swelling went down and I put my glasses on, and then had relatively no trouble touching my nose and touching the nurse's finger, they were like, oh, nah, she alright. But all that happened on Monday. Sunday, however, I was expectedly exhausted. In fact, when I wasn't lying in a hospital bed, I was getting more MRI tests ran. Barely propped up in my wheelchair, waiting to get taken back, looking like one of those horror game monsters. You know the ones, when they're obviously gonna jump as you pass. All I needed was the blinking hallway light and the buzz. And then I was carted off back to the room to get a good night's sleep. Or so I thought, cause... So, I legitimately don't know what they put in that anesthesia, but the post-surgery ideas were hitting! Recontextualized relationships and leftovers. Relationships I didn't even know how to work out before. New characters just coming one after another. I even conceptualized a new Tropius variant, though I wouldn't be able to draw it until weeks later. And, well, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I had been feeling like a dull butter knife these past few months. Getting creatively impatient, feeling unfulfilled, unable to figure out how to execute the ideas I wanted to do. And crazily enough, I think it was this tumor? Because it's like everything hit me at once after surgery. Like it was on backlog in a queue or something waiting to go through. I even had some sonic ideas. Yeah, let's just call them that. In fact, once Monday came and my friends were able to come see me, I told them about all these new ideas, and one of them literally said to me with a straight face, you know, I said to myself on the drive over, if I come over here and she's talking about some weird Sonic thing, I know she'll be fine. And considering this is one of the friends who basically watched on the sidelines as I was dragged into the franchise against my will, it is hilarious that this was what they chose as a metric of good health. God, I love my friends. Actually, while we're on the subject, When Kirishima passed, I went through this brief phase of feeling the loneliest I've ever felt. Like, when I die, who's gonna be there for me? I not only live alone, so there was a fear that I'd pass out in the shower and not be found for like a month or something, but I'm also horrible at keeping contact with people. I just don't have the social energy for it. So when I say I was absolutely shocked at the way people showed up and showed out for my spontaneous brain surgery, I need you to believe that from the bottom of my heart, I never expected this. I even had a period where I felt like, what did I do to deserve so much kindness and generosity? And I wasn't the only one feeling like this. My mom was too, about her own connections. See, we're both the type of people to be strong and push through stuff without asking for help. So when we were constantly faced at every turn by people who wanted to help us regardless, I mean, it really moved us. And actually, I think this is the perfect time to give out the accolades because y'all are the real MVPs, so... Ladies and gentlemen, in no particular order of importance, shout out to the entire team of doctors and nurses who took care of me during my stay. Y'all really carried me through spontaneous brain surgery and made it look effortless. Of course, I gotta give a big shout out to my mom, who had like 5 different text chains going, keeping everyone updated, including my friends, and then proceeded to take me home to her ground floor apartment to be my caretaker while I recovered. This woman literally had to do stuff like wash me up when I wasn't strong enough to stay in the shower. Crazy stuff we've been through this month. I love my mom. And can I just shout out to her friends who were there to support her? To the 3 friends who drove up 2.5 hours just to be with her while I was in surgery. To the friend who dropped off a bag of clothes for her that ended up being too small. To the friend who actually literally ordered groceries for us so we wouldn't have anything to worry about when we get back. Next, I'd like to shout out both sides of my family. My dad's side for all checking in on me en masse, and especially the few who didn't want to bombard me, so they gave me some time and checked in on me later. Dad actually sent me the first flowers I received, and they were absolutely gorgeous. And my mom's side, who not only checked in on me, but took care of me while I was home. In fact, we arrived after being discharged Tuesday to my pop-up aunt and cousin, bringing over a recliner so I could sleep sitting up if I wanted to. And because my nana was sick before she passed, we actually didn't have to buy any walkers or a shower chair or any of that. So I low-key feel like that was her way of looking down and helping as well. Shout out to my coworkers who literally had to process, hey, I'm taking off Thursday for an appointment. Oops, I've got a brain tumor, so I'll be out for 6 weeks within a matter of days. And then told me to take all the time I need and even sent flowers. And finally, a huge shout out to my own friends, a bunch of whom not only got to visit, but one of them not only offered to take care of my apartment while I was away, but told my mom while I was in surgery, make sure you take pics, she likes to document. I was so mad when I woke up and asked mom to take a pic of me, and she hit me with the, yep, already did, your friend told me to. Girl, that's how I know we know each other too long. I also had a friend send me an actual care package of just snacks and stuff. And in there was a gripper, so I no longer had to use my feet to pick up stuff. Shout out to another friend who even bought me flowers and this cool Pokemon TCG set. And another friend who made this hilarious card at work, but because I didn't have my glasses on and didn't realize what it said until like an hour later after they pointed it out, and I lost my mind. I know we lead busy lives, especially being in our 20s when we're trying to establish ourselves, but I truly appreciate you all coming to visit, and it really made my Monday night. Okay, now that we're done with that, back to the chronological timeline. Monday was basically visitation day, as it's when my friends came, but I also had speech and physical therapy. See, the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, which means my hand game was weak enough to the point where I couldn't hold my phone. It doesn't even get me started on doing the stinky leg every time I try to stand. Speech-wise, the left of your brain also controls your language centers, and as of writing this script, I still haven't fully recovered from mush mouth, but you'll probably never hear those takes. Side note, but you see this little baggie attached to me? It's kind of gross, but it had a tube connected to my head where drainage was happening, and I will never not find it hilarious how I just had a little baggie of brain juice clipped to me like a coin purse. Getting that tube out of my head hurt a little bit, not gonna lie. The physical therapist also gave me these cool little hand toys, including buttons and clay to put them in and fish them out of. And a bar I'm just now realizing is the exact same bar I use in my outpatient physical therapy. Oh yeah, I've got to take outpatient physical therapy, I'll get to that in a minute. But aside from waking my mom up at 3 3 a.m. and telling her I was tired of being in bed, wanted to walk, and I needed a ginger ale with the same energy as that Caleb City Venus flytrap vid, and then proceeding to take 3 laps very slowly with my walker. My Monday night ended, and I was discharged from Johns Hopkins Tuesday morning, but not before having a couple of bombs dropped on me. Who's gonna tell them that isn't 7 centimeters? Girl, what is that? Surprise, it was actually the size of a grapefruit, huh? And that was just living in my head rent-free? I have on my medical records that I have a history of migraines. Girl, was that you? Oh, hungry. This thing was actually so big that it bust through my skull. I repeat, it busted through my skull. I don't even have cranium there anymore. It's just a titanium plate, which is admittedly pretty metal, not gonna lie. But the second bomb dropped when they were about to unwrap my head, which actually might have happened on Monday, but oh well, I can't remember. Mom was like, so is her hair gonna grow back? And I had to hit her with the, huh? I literally did not know they had to shave my head until they were about to unwrap it. I mean, I guess they had to get in there somehow, but I just never thought about it. And as soon as Mom finished her breakfast eggs and braced herself, the nurse unwrapped my head. And I'll actually be showing photos here, so if you don't want to see the scar, just skip to this time. Ta-da! Looking like somebody pop off of Mad Max. Mom made sure I felt alright. I mean, there's a giant bald strip down my head, but thankfully I've never been the type to care about my appearance. So I was like, are you kidding me? I have a scar of staples down the middle of my head and my vision back. That's at least cool for the story I'll be able to tell. And yeah, with those bombs dropped, I was officially discharged from Johns Hopkins to be taken home and taken care of by my mom. Cause I normally live alone on the 3rd floor and...
Boy, ain't no way, boy.
I realize my hometown is very slow paced. It's actually almost kind of cute, especially after living in close proximity to the city for so long. I had not been home in, God, a year or two. Mom came up to visit me most times to get away from the slower paced shore. And by the time I felt the impulse to come home to check on everyone, my eyes were to the point where I really shouldn't have been driving 2.5 hours anywhere. So I especially appreciate it this time around. Slower paced is, as it turns out, exactly what I needed. Now all I had to do was set up my outpatient physical therapy and spend the rest of the month recovering and not working on projects. Okay, so I'm always doing something. So the challenge when I first got back was doing absolutely nothing and just letting my body heal. That said, I had to let my readers know that Chapter 18 of Leftovers would unfortunately not be coming out this month like I originally planned. And not gonna lie, the responses ranged from incredibly kind and patient to hilariously, genuinely concerned. I titled my post, "Whoops, small update XD," and someone just commented, that's not exactly a small update. And I had a good laugh about that. Someone else was like, oh my god, I can't believe you took a critical hit in real life. And using Pokemon references to describe my situation IRL is so funny to me, especially considering how critical hits are feared in the Nuzlocke community because they can potentially be run enders. And, well, okay, I might as well put this here now. Just because Leftovers is a Nuzlocke doesn't mean there aren't going to be some real deep moments of suffering. And since Kirishima passed, the relationship I have with grief is feeling real tangible. I know exactly how to hurt these characters when the time comes. So don't think y'all off the hook, is what I'm saying. Anyway, where was I going? Oh yeah. My outpatient physical therapy place is truly something special. Also, I've never done physical therapy before outside of briefly at Johns Hopkins, so it's a brand new experience. But there's something about going to these sessions and slowly feeling your body get stronger that's a real confidence booster. Like, I'm really doing it. The first session was an intake session where I told her everything that was going on, including about my hedgehog. You know, it was nice to get all that off my chest, to be honest. She was like, and yet here you are laughing about it. Wow. And I had to finally realize that, yeah, I was taking this incredibly well. I think that's when it started to set in, to be honest. At some point I mentioned something like hating going to grocery stores, but then again, I have limited social energy anyway, so maybe that wasn't even the tumor. So when she handed me the schedule, by the way, I didn't even know there was going to be a schedule. I thought it was in one and done for some reason, which where is the therapy? So that makes little sense, but whatever. But yeah, when she handed me the schedule and told me the regular sessions are twice a week, and that I'd be doing it until the end of the month, I was like, oh, okay. This woman just looked at me, paused, and said, This is really hard for you, huh? And I couldn't help but laugh and say, yeah, because I knew she was commenting on my social energy thing. That is twice I have been called out by a therapist. I'm so tired. But the actual sessions have been amazing. Wondering what new stuff is going to get added to my exercise routine every time I go. And hilariously enough, the best part, in my opinion, has been the social aspect of meeting all these new characters. At one point, one of the therapists and I spent the whole session getting incredibly dramatic to Britney Spears music. At another, I learned that one of the older patients was there with the same situation that I had, that is, recovering from a brain tumor. It's just always a good time when I go there. But recovery didn't just happen via physical therapy, because like I said, I can't never just sit down nowhere. So here's how things went for the first 3 weeks while I was home. First week, I was supposed to use the walker to get around. I abandoned it that first night to try and go to the bathroom by myself, which ended up working pretty well. However, I still had to be bathed by my mom at this point. Also, wasn't allowed to carry over 5 pounds at risk of straining, so she had to cook me dinner and bring me the bowls and such. Mom and I actually started watching a show called Insecure, which she had already binged through. And it's been really fun for the past 3 weeks. I made more calls than I ever have in that 1 week alone, just so people could hear my voice. Though it was nice to talk to everyone again, admittedly. But okay, hear me out. I have 2 phones. A Google Pixel, which only works on Wi-Fi, and a crappy phone AT&T sent me when they switched over to 5G. Later on in the week, Mom and I go out shopping for these really cute baskets she makes, and it's honestly therapeutic to be able to walk in a store, even if I get winded every few steps. In fact, the first week I tried to make breakfast and it took me out. You never realize how much brain power goes into cooking or basic stuff, trying to figure out the order of things, especially in someone else's kitchen. I cooked sausage, egg, and grits and had to take a nap afterwards. That's crazy to me. Mom was still holding on to me for support whenever we went out because my legs were weak. But I'm still getting around without the walker. And sleep is, well, sleep was bad before all this went down, so it's even worse since I can't lay on one whole side of my head. But we very quickly get me a fuzzy body pillow to lay on one side, and when I tell you this thing is the truth, also random, but the Mario movie brain rot has taken over at this point. Because the plan was that I was going to go see it with my friends when it came out, but obviously considering recent events, I wasn't able to go see it. I wouldn't be able to go see it for a while due to sensory issues alone. So I made a plan to see it on April 21st after my follow-up eye appointment at Johns Hopkins. As of writing this script, that is this Friday. So I'm super excited. Lastly, so Rent came out that Saturday, and I currently have a month unpaid off work, so that's been interesting. Thankfully, I have a savings, so while I won't say money isn't a problem, I will say I've at least got a nice cushion. Week 2, things are getting serious. Because I realized I want to make a shrine or something for Kirishima to put in his cage spot when I get back home. And after buying this small couch jewelry box at Ross's last week, I decided to make posable figures of us and put them chilling on the couch, maybe surrounded by pictures of us or something. I think of it as my own physical therapy, because Sculpey is tough, so dealing with it is sure to get my hands back in order. But here's the thing. I don't just want me and Kirishima normally. It's finally time to admit that getting into Sonic is what led me to getting a hedgehog in the first place. So I designed us Sonic OCs. And they're so cute. Other things that happened in week 2 were just more improvement on the last week. I still can't fully walk around to music without getting winded, but I learned how to make breakfast without hitting 5 HP this time. Started taking breaks to just lay in the room in the dark, sometimes with an ice pack on my head to stop the swelling, and listening to my favorite podcasts. And I'm starting to finally just settle into doing nothing? This is how I know I needed a break. Oh, and you remember how I mentioned Mom was supposed to start her job March 27th? Well, they also gave her the take all the time you need talk and gave her the entire first week off when we were home. So she actually started this Monday. Then had to take off Friday, April 7th for us to go back to Johns Hopkins to get my staples removed. Her new job is incredibly generous, and I would like to shout out them as well. Thank you for taking good care of my mom and allowing her to have off for. A couple nights before we went back up the road to get my staples removed, I finally admitted to my mom, I was scared to go back to my apartment. I hadn't been back in 2 weeks, and I left it in so much darkness, both literally and mentally. Kirishima had just passed. I was mentally exhausted. I literally couldn't see out of one eye, and I was still dreading the age of 28 and what would happen at the appointment. She looked at me and simply said, "You know, a lot of that darkness was caused by the tumor when you think about it. So when you get back, I bet you'll see your apartment in a whole new light." And you know what? She was right. It took a few moments. I had to breathe, but it felt so comfortable being in my own space again on that Thursday night after 2 weeks. I even made it up the steps very carefully, but definitely got confirmation that I wasn't ready to return long term, which is nice because I have a bad habit of feeling like I'm being over dramatic about things. Yes, I know, I had brain surgery. No, it didn't matter. But it was nice to hit the steps to confirm that staying on the shore was a proper option. The best part of the night, however, was finally getting to see Kirishima's ashes after 2 weeks. See, Mom picked them up and brought them to my apartment when I was in the hospital, and then I was carted off to the Eastern Shore after discharge. So finally getting to see him was something I was very excited about. The scattering tube wasn't really anything flashy, but I was surprised by how big it was. I didn't realize man's was so large. But the paw print plate, man, I didn't realize they were going to use his actual paw prints because, I mean, he's a hedgehog. But when I opened that box and saw his actual feet imprinted, I almost lost it. Almost cried, sure, but also, look at his little slicted feet and uneven nails. Truly a chip off the old block. I also ended up buying this really pretty necklace to put a small amount of his ashes in. This thing looks like an item equipped. Like, I'm finna summon Kiri. I mean, considering he was on my chest post-surgery, he's probably my guardian angel now or something, so it checks out. But the crazy thing is that the instructions specifically stated, it's best to use small grains in the funnel like you're filling salt. Kiri said, small grains? I don't come in small grains. It was incredibly difficult for me and Mom to get him in a necklace is what I'm saying. Like, why are you still fighting me? Your ashes! I love and miss you so much, Kiri. And seriously, I'm so glad to have a piece of you with me to actually take around, right over my heart, where it belongs. That Friday morning, Mom and I get breakfast and then head to the Johns Hopkins campus. It was closer to where I lived. Turns out that's where my appointment was. And also turns out my staples were being removed by none other than the him of brain surgery. Okay, let's try this again. Dr. Chetan Betagowda. I think I got it this time. I wasn't sure if he was actually going to be the one to do it, but I'm so glad I got to meet him when I was actually lucid this time. Had my glasses on and everything. Still such a gentleman. I'm excited to see my ophthalmologist again for that checkup on the 21st too. But for now, Mom and I had to have the celebration we were actually supposed to have the weekend of the 24th. Going out to eat, celebrating her new job, and heading back to the shore. Week 3 recovery is a lot more stable than the others. I'm continuing physical therapy twice a week, with my pop-up taking me and occasionally picking me up, and thankful for some kind of structure in that regard. And these wooden step-up exercises they started me on actually helped me the most, because my knees were creaking like an old chair. But now I can handle steps pretty well in theory. We'll see when I get back home this weekend. Mom and I finished Insecure, and honestly, what an amazing show. In fact, a lot of the vibes from it were reflected in real life. Or well, the musical aspect, not the toxicity. Between listening to the old 98.9 station, because Mom doesn't use CDs like I do, to the 80-degree sun setting right as we were returning from a long stint of basket shopping, all backdropped by like Ari Lennox's Pressure or something. We even went to the boardwalk during the weekend specifically to scratch that craving for Thrash's French fries, dough roller pizza, and a strong soda. And it was so good. And I also got these pictures. And week 4 brings us up to date. Aside from my original stamina, I'm pretty much back to my full self. As far as the stamina, I'm working on that and weight training and physical therapy, and I have 1 more week left. Also, those specialist copays are outrageous. $60 a session, you're hurting me. But I think after this long journey, I'm finally ready to give my closing thoughts on this video. So, to say this entire experience has given me a new lease on life is no exaggeration. The thing is, it's a comfortable series of changes, if that makes sense. What I mean is, everything I want to do after I turn 28 was already in motion beforehand. So it's more like just finally getting it started. I want to take better care of my health and go back to calorie counting, meal prepping, and working out like I did before I got my job. As it turns out, I had my first salad recently, because despite loving vegetables, the thought of raw lettuce used to make me gag. But I don't know, something about jumping into spontaneous brain surgery makes the lettuce seem not so serious. So I've just got this whole new food group just open up to me, and that's very exciting. I've also been thinking about going natural hair-wise for a while, but despite not caring much about my appearance, I wasn't really sure if I was ready for that big chop. To be bald for an extended period of time until my hair grew back. And that's not a problem now. I've been partially bald for weeks. So I'm like, why not start over? I usually get my hair relaxed to get it straightened, which for those of you who don't know, tends to hurt. Like, a lot. In fact, my abnormally high pain tolerance, the thing that allowed me to just take several needles over my hospital visit, was probably formed by getting relaxers over the years. Seriously, I cannot stress enough, when those chemicals set in and you accidentally scratch your scalp beforehand, and don't let it stay in too long unless you're trying to get burned. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to not having to do that anymore. But that also means I'm going to actually have to make an effort to take care of my hair and try different products. I have legitimately only seen my natural curly hair in childhood photos of me at this point, so I think the excitement just about overtakes the stress of coming up with different products to use. Another thing I've been wanting to do is keep up with people more. This is where that phone thing comes in, because I finally decided to buy the Bullet and go in to have my card switched over to a nano SIM for my Google Pixel phone, which, first of all, turns out I had a very accessible nano SIM all along and could have just done this whole thing myself months ago, but whatever. But I cannot stress how much the AT&T phones suck the life out of doing anything related to phone calls and texting. But my Google Pixel? My Google Pixel is big chillin'. It's so much easier to use that I don't actually hate calling people because of it. It's crazy how much of a difference good UI makes. The last of my goals is to move out of my apartment. Something I've been planning for literal years at this point, especially since I just kinda ended up in this one after taking over the lease prematurely while my mom moved back to the shore. I would not have chosen this apartment, but I made it work, just like with all things. And it served us well over the years, but I once again realized this wasn't just my place. It was me and Kiri's. And with him having passed on, I feel a lot better about making the decision to move. And I actually already have a place that I fall in love with. It's just a matter of whether or not a unit's going to be available when it comes time for me to move in August. So, guess we'll see. And that just about wraps up this video, but I want to give out one final accolade before I close. Shout out to me. Yes, me. The me who would have been a mess just a few years ago when faced with the idea of spontaneous brain surgery. The me who has, despite still being anxious, been able to go with the flow throughout this whole situation. And the me who has recounted this whole circumstance with humor, despite the craziness of it. I even allowed myself to turn into one of those people. You know, the it's my birthday month chick. Because I think I can say I deserve it. I'm always worried about crossing over into cockiness when giving yourself props. But honestly, this month, I might be him. Just for this month though. Point is, there's a reason why I usually celebrate leftovers anniversary instead of my birthday each year. It is one of my biggest accomplishments after all. But this year, I'm celebrating myself and how after several years of doubt, I finally made it to 28 and I'm feeling great. Thanks for watching. Picard, signing out. I would get a spinal tap. I would get a spinal. I would get a spite. Wow. Okay.